Well, good day to you. It is January the 11th, 2025. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. My name is Gary Willing. I want to welcome everyone to Search for Science. And as I always like to do, I want to just point out to those people who are new, remind those people who've heard these videos before, that if you want to know more about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, if you want to see if there's any truth to this information for yourself, the best thing to do is to read more about this information by investigating it on some websites that I've provided links for in the description portion of these videos. Look to the left, look to the right, look down below the video, wherever. There are links that take you to websites that talk about this information, such as the Share International website. Wonderful website to get some really good background information about Maitreya to see if there's any truth to this information. For you, if you want to come back and join the discussion, let me know what you think. Post a comment. You can ask a question by posting your question in the comments section. And or you can email me at searchforscience@mail.com. So I had some wonderful comments, and I had a question that came my way since the last time I put a video up. Let's see. Seth. All right, Schizo. I had to address this one. This was funny. No, I can assure you I'm not hearing any voices that are telling me to put these videos up, Seth, but thank you very much for the comment and your vote of confidence for sure. Did you give me a thumbs up? No, you didn't give me a thumbs up. Let's see. Somebody else asked or said that said give us a title for this show, and I'll watch it. So I'll put a really kick-ass title for this video, so you'll watch it there, Puggery Ray or whatever your name is. But thank you very much for the comment. Now, this one I wanted to talk about. This is coming from John Dubusky. And I want to say, John, if you're listening to this, because it seems like you do listen to these videos from some of the things that you've commented about, I can kind of tell that you're at least listening to a little bit of it. So I appreciate that, and I respect you for doing that, for sure, especially since I know you don't agree with what I have to say. But you said, SYS, save your soul, accept Jesus as your Savior today. These masters are false teachers and false prophets. Pray for this man. He means well, but is deceived. He really is promoting another Savior. Maitreya and the masters can't save your soul. And that's true. They can't save your soul. And then you also put in there, I just want to leave, I don't want to leave the whole thing out, but follow the one who can save your soul, Jesus. Well, thank you very much. But these masters and Maitreya will never claim to save you of anything, really. But I will quote Maitreya by saying, it has nothing to do with saving your soul or saving anybody or them being saviors or prophets or whatever. Maitreya once said, keep your eyes on the prize, and the prize is humanity. So that's what I have to say about that one. But what I wanted to talk about when you said false teachers, you said these masters are false teachers and false prophets. A false teacher is someone who gives you a teaching and it doesn't work or it's bad. Or it actually works against you, right? So for instance, and that can go for a piano teacher, it can go for a football coach, and it could go for somebody like Maitreya, right? Who's a spiritual teacher. But let's take a football coach, for instance. If I'm a pretty good quarterback and I get a new coach and they start having me do a different technique that doesn't work, and now my quarterback rating goes into the toilet and I'm throwing all these interceptions all over the place based on the instructions that I'm getting from my coach, then they're probably a bad coach. Conversely, if I was not doing very good and I needed help and all of a sudden I get this coach, or whether it's an offense coordinator or a head coach, and they start getting me to see things that I was doing incorrectly, and then I change it and I take their advice or their feedback and then I improve, then it would really, you could say that they're a good teacher. Now, what is the difference between a good teacher and a bad teacher? It's their teaching. If the teaching works, they're a good teacher. If it doesn't work, they're probably a bad teacher. Now, the question that I always throw back to people, and not one person has ever come back and said, I have an answer to that, and I can prove you wrong, by my own experience. But I always like to throw it back into people's, hit that ball back into your court, John, by saying, have you ever heard Maitreya speak? Have you ever tried the teachings that he is already starting to give to the world and see if they work or not before you make a claim that he is a false teacher? Myself, I've met Maitreya many times, and that's not enough. That's not enough for me to sit here and want to talk about him from my perspective as much as I do. What's really prompting me to do this is not only my experiences, but more importantly, it's the fact that the teachings that he's given to me personally and the teachings that I've read in Benjamin Creme's book, when I've tried it and applied it, they work. So there must be something to the teacher. You know, Jesus himself, and you're a Christian, Jesus himself said, a tree is known by its fruit. It's a very simple process that anyone can do to test whether a teaching is good or bad. It's 100%. You don't have to be a smart individual. You don't have to be a Christian. You don't have to be anything. Any one of us could do this. So, for instance, you know, when Maitreya said, and I'm going to give you a couple different instances, but for one instance was, Maitreya said to me, at the time that he said it, I was pretty much a very critical person of myself, of my situation, but also the people in my life. And I noticed that I didn't have a lot of people who really cared about me other than my close family. You know, I wanted to have more caring relationships with people, but it never seemed to work. Well, and I didn't really know what I was doing wrong. Okay. Now, I didn't ask Maitreya for any guidance on this, but I was always looking to become a more accepting person and a more loving person and be more like these masters and eventually learn unconditional love. That was, you know, I was pre-installed from the factory with that desire. Okay. So throughout my life, I'd had these aspirations of loving unconditionally. And then I came across the information about the masters. And I'm like, wow, you can actually do that too? It's not just somebody like Jesus? Well, shoot, I'll try it. Well, nothing was working. You know, I mean, maybe I was getting a little bit closer to it, but for the most part, it really wasn't working. Because of what I was doing to try to become a unconditionally loving person doesn't work. You have to do something, right? You can't just say you want to be loving and unconditional. So, one day, Maitreya said to me, and this was years after me trying to do this and fail, he gave me a very simple teaching. He said, but he put it on him, and it took me years to figure out that he wasn't saying it about himself, he was saying it for me. Okay, but what he said was, I never judge anyone on whether they're good or bad, I only notice the good things that they do. Then, years after he said that, I was like, let me try that. I said, this isn't working, right? You know, I'm miserable around people. You know, I think people are causing me physical angst, you know what I'm saying, because I'm being critical of them. Well, anyway, I tried it on someone who worked with me. It was someone very specific who really got under my skin every time I saw him. I mean, my blood pressure started to go up every single time I was around this person. And I tried what Maitreya said. I tried to notice one or two good things that they were doing. I couldn't do everything. I couldn't only see the good things. I could just do one thing or two things. When I focused on those one thing, like a meditation almost, at that moment, I forgot about what made me critical of this person. And then the next day, when they started to make me upset, I thought about another good thing or the same thing. I can't remember. It was just, but it took work and practice. But then I started to notice I felt better around the person, and I wasn't quite as uptight every time they came into my sphere, right? And what happened was, not long after I had tried this, another person apparently was having an issue with this person and said something very critical about them. And I was actually stepped in and I defended him by saying the two or three good things that I had noticed. Well, he does such and such, and then he also does this. He's not that bad, and it didn't work. She didn't see it the way I saw it, but I was like, what happened? I went from being just like this person who saw nothing but the bad things that they were doing. And then after a while, I started to notice a couple good things that they were doing, and it changed my attitude toward them. And then that person's attitude toward me changed. And they weren't quite as critical about me, which was really causing me the angst to begin with, because they were highly critical of my job performance and things like that. Even though I worked really hard, they were doing it like that. So it changed the way that it did. And this all came from what Maitreya said to me. So if he is a false teacher, that would not have worked in that way. So unless you have evidence in the contrary, then I would say that you really don't know what you're talking about, John, to be honest. And I would say, and there's nothing wrong. I'm not saying that you're a bad person because you don't know what you're talking about when it comes to Maitreya. I would just suggest hold off on your criticism and your judgment of someone that you haven't even seen yet, or if you've seen him, you haven't recognized him as Maitreya yet, until you actually see what he says. And then when he gives a teaching, try it and see if it works. If it doesn't work and it goes bad on you, then you're right. If it doesn't, then maybe there is something to who and what he is as a teacher. Because he only wants to be referred to as a teacher, not as a prophet, not as a savior. That is true. So, hopefully that helps, right? Now, the other thing, too, when it comes to teaching that he's already given the world, I want to talk about a tree is known by its fruit like this, right? So, Maitreya says, without sharing, there will be no justice. Without justice, there will be no peace. Now, there's another part to it. Without peace, there will be no future. We don't know the outcome of that yet, and hopefully we never will, right? Know that without peace, there will be no future, right? Hopefully we will create peace so we have a future, right? Now, the beginning part, without sharing, there will be no justice. Without justice, there will be no peace. Well, you might say, well, yeah, that sounds great, but there's no way to really prove it. Well, I actually have historical evidence of that working, and it's the Marshall Plan. Right after World War II, when the United States tried it with Western Europe, it created trust amongst those nations. The peoples of those nations trust the peoples of the other nations better than they trust any other peoples on the planet. And they created goodwill amongst those nations, and the outcome was there's a little bit of peace between those nations because none of those nations have attacked one another since they tried it. So a tree is known by its fruit. And incidentally, the Marshall Plan was inspired by Maitreya. You don't have to necessarily believe that, but it was inspired by Maitreya for the United States to do. Now, the other thing is, if you look at what the United States via the Pentagon has been trying to do over the last 70 years, with attacking this nation, doing nation building for this one, putting on sanctions on that one, building up a military, having all this bluster and threats toward other nations. All the while, they tell us that will bring about peace. And it hasn't. A tree is known by its fruit too, right? So has it brought about peace? They promised that it was going to be about peace, and it hasn't. So they are the false prophets in a way, because they were predicting and saying and promising that if you go along with our methods of our foreign policy methods the way that we say that we should, right, which is only getting them richer is the reason why they're promising this, then we will have peace. They're playing on exactly what Maitreya said. Every person, without exception, within their heart wants peace. They're playing on that. They're promising people, if you just go along this, if you just let us spend all this money of your taxes, where it should be going to you, comes to us, we can get rich by doing this, it will bring about peace. And it doesn't. So that's where I would really put my energy and focus into, John. You know what I mean? So hopefully that makes sense. And hopefully you'll listen to all this, because I'm trying to help, right? But when it comes to anybody, if the teaching doesn't work, don't follow it. But don't say somebody's a false teacher if you've never even heard them speak. That doesn't make much sense, right? So anyway, then it's just prejudice based on ideology differences, which is what Maitreya says. When people referred to him, when they started to meet him, recognize his spiritual, who he was as a spiritual person, as a teacher, and those kind of things, started to recognize his wisdom, experience his love. They started to recognize him as their awaited teacher. And they asked him, are you the Christ, or are you the Imam Mahdi? And he said, rather than saying yes, because he could theoretically say yes, the way he said it was, if I am the Christ for the Christians, what about the Imam Mahdi for the Muslims? If I'm the Imam Mahdi for the Muslims, what about the Messiah for the Jews? He said, these are just names that people created about him. That's what we look for him as. Unfortunately, because of the ideological differences and the different types of teachings that man has put into their spiritual texts, such as the Bible, about the return of the teacher, it's been written in such a way that it's created nothing but confusion. There's no truth to anything that Jesus is going to come back from the clouds with a host of angels, other than the fact that it's a symbolic imagery of what happened on July 19th, 1977, when Maitreya left his ancient retreat in the Himalayas, descended into Pakistan, and got on a plane and flew to London. He could have thought himself there in an instant. He only did that because man made this prophecy about the Christ returning from the clouds. That was why he did it the way that he did it. But the way that they expect the Imam Mahdi to come back, the way that they expect the Kalki Avatar or the fifth Buddha, Maitreya Buddha, to come back, these are all causing confusion to the people who believe those texts. So Maitreya's manifestation is much more simple than that. But if you try his teachings and you look at his teachings, you'll see that there is truth to what he's saying. And he's, and that's how you should judge a teacher, to be honest. But anyway, thank you very much for the comment. All right, Kimba 108. Let me get to your question. I'm sorry it's taking me a while to get to it. So, what is your connection with Sai Baba, Yeshua, or Maitreya? And then you said something about Mother Teresa, I guess. Is it Fauci's mother or father and involved in child trafficking? Is that what you said? I don't really know. Let me get to my connection about with Sai Baba, Yeshua, and Maitreya. I have just as much a connection with them as you guys do. There is nothing special on my end about any kind of connection with them. I want what Maitreya wants for the world. I want peace. And the way that I see that I could help bring about that peace is to share information that I have about Maitreya, because not very many people are doing it. If there was thousands upon thousands of people already talking about Maitreya, I probably would try to find something else to do. You know what I'm saying? But there aren't very many people doing it, especially on YouTube. There are a few, but not very many, and so the more the merrier, I guess, is really what it is. And so my interest is with Maitreya and speaking about Maitreya is the fact that not very many people are talking about him, but I do think it's important to know about Maitreya, which will hopefully make it easier for any one of you when you see Maitreya on TV, hear him speak, to recognize him, perhaps listen to him with a tad bit more of an open mind than you would have if you didn't know anything about Maitreya, but also, too, to hopefully some of you are starting to meditate and ruminate on the priorities of Maitreya and see if there's any truth to it, right? That's what my hope is. I don't expect anybody to believe what I have to say or do anything with it. I don't know, what I mean? But that's the only thing that I would hope for. But there is no more connection. I have no more of a connection with Maitreya than you who asked this question, right? Now, in terms of Mother Teresa, it seems like par for the course when somebody is really standing for a possibility for humanity, such as Mother Teresa, right? That they start to get their detractors and people start to, it's not real criticism. They're doing it because I think people who throw stones in that way, a lot of it is jealousy, I think. They're jealous of what the other person's doing. They did it with Jimmy Carter, who just passed away, right? For years, people hated him, right? And now that he's dead, they're speaking about him a little differently, right? But he was a good man. Yeah, he wasn't perfect. He even admitted he wasn't perfect, right? But he was a good man. He had integrity. I think that was part of his problem as president, is he didn't know how to really lie to people. He was too honest. And I don't think the people in the United States want an honest politician, to be honest. That's why we keep electing these people that keep lying to us, right? But, people like Mother Teresa, and Maitreya even referenced her one time about service and how to serve, is he said, Mother Teresa served every time she took a breath. She was serving in that way. Was she perfect? No. Were some of her intentions maybe to help expand the influence of the Catholic Church? Probably. But who really cares? To be at the end of the day, she helped a lot of people. She inspired a lot of people to do good. She's continuing even after she's been dead for a long time, to inspire people to do good, to help other people. She brought about and helped to create awareness of the injustice economically between the rich and the poor. She did a lot. And anybody that throws any kind of, shade her way, really, I would just say, well, what have you done? And if you've done more than she has, then okay. But if you haven't, then I would say shut up, to be honest. But it just seems to be, like I said, just seems to be par for the course when somebody really is serving humanity, how the distrust, the paranoia, the criticism, the hatred, the vitriol, communications and stuff like this just seem to kind of just come out of the woodwork. And, Jesus had to deal with it. The Buddha had to deal with it. Muhammad had his detractors, and even to this day, people like Mother Teresa did. But was she involved in what you were saying? No. But anyway, I appreciate the question nonetheless. And like I said, as for my connection with who you talked about, a better question would be, what is the connection between Maitreya and Sai Baba, to be honest? And there is a connection between those two. And Maitreya is a planetary Christ. He's a Christ on the planetary level, as is the Buddha, which is unbelievably rare for this planet. And in fact, Ben's master said that he didn't know any other instance of a planet of our evolution where a Christ was on it. And yet it manifested one Christ, let alone two. So we're doubly blessed. But Sai Baba is a Christ on the cosmic level, which is higher than the planetary level. And he first incarnated, had his first incarnation, and then he had his second incarnation that just ended not too long ago, and is expected to have a third incarnation, and that will be this Sai Baba's third and final manifestation on this planet. But he's bringing cosmic Christ energy to this planet, which we don't really know the benefits of that and the blessings of that, but it's bringing a huge blessing to humanity, for sure. So anyway, but that, I would say, go to the Share International site, and Ben talks about the connection and the work that Maitreya's and Sai Baba are doing for humanity. He goes into more depth than I could possibly do it. So hopefully you'll take the time to do that. I love you guys. Thank you very much. And thank you for the questions and the comments, John. I appreciate it. And you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.